picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
There's a lot of secrets in District 9.
Well, hello and welcome back. It is Tuesday morning, and I would have gotten more done yesterday, but I had a vinyl order to get out, so took care of that, and today I'm ready to get back on the gun detailing. Been picking at this for the last few days and painting in some details here and there, and I decided now is the best time to put the decals on before I put any grunge effect over top of it. So these are the decals that Tony was able to send me out a new set of, and I am eternally grateful for that. And but of course I've lost the instructions that went along with it, so I resort back to my reference, and here is my reference, and I'm assuming everything that's on one side is on the other, so I shall make short work of it by using this to go by. And the decaling be done. I just put everything down and then put a light coat of Solvacet over them to hope them hunker down a little bit. And I am hopeful that everything will turn out just fine. Now, once these have set and dried, I will hit everything with one last, probably a coat of satin, just to seal in the decals. And then I'm going to go in with the transparent black and accentuate some of these details that are in recesses, but I don't want to do that over the decal film, so I want to make sure that's over a coat of the satin, and hopefully that satin won't yellow. I've had satins or gloss coats yellow in the past because the gloss pigment was not shaken up well enough, wasn't shaken up well enough. So give it a good shake and a light coat, and then we'll be ready for some weathering, and then we'll get back onto the bug at large and get on to the actual stuff. But getting the hardware taken care of first was important. Well, hello and how you do? It's time for a little midweek check-in. It's Wednesday morning and work continues on the Prawn from District 9. And you know, model making can be a tedious thing. It can be just hard work sometimes. Yesterday I took a little time to, watch the movie again, just to get reference, of course, not to enjoy the really good movie, but to get reference. It's hard work doing these things. And it came to three very important revelations. One is that Christopher Johnson himself has a lot more Kelly greens as an undercoat. So Kelly greens with like a lighter mud highlight on it. But that's good because it gets me away from the cockroach colors, the browns, the umbers, the umbers, all of those burrs. Gets me away from that spectrum and more into the Kelly green spectrum. So I started playing with colors on the arm to reflect it. Now that's the undercoat. That's the creases and the folds and things like that. And then there's dry brushing on top of that. But at the very base of it, it's more, the darks are more of a Kelly green, which is good. Secondly, the gun that I want to use is a lot more beat up than I was doing. And I was painting it very pristine and white, very clean whites and orange, and using the picture that's in the book, which is a great place to start, but the amount of weathering shown in the movie really helps tie it in, makes it look more realistic. And third was the trash. I wanted to get a good look at how, what kind of colors were in the trash and on the ground, because it was the district itself, the slum, was heavily littered, but it was mostly littered with two things: cardboard and corrugated steel, which neither one are in the base. So here is, this base is a heavy chunk of resin. This is the base I've been working on. I've been picking at little colors and trying to figure out what to put into it. There was a lot of newspaper, magazines, printed stuff also on the ground, and that is, I'm trying to put a good base in so that I can use my dry brushing to pick out some colors of newspaper and magazine, things like that. And wanted to see basically what color was the dirt in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where this was filmed. Here in North Carolina, the dirt is very, it's red clay, It's not the good old brown dirt that I was used to growing up. It's more of the red typical. When you think of Georgia clay, you think of a red color, and that's what we got here. So to find good brownish dirt like they had in the movie, I needed to know what color that was. So let's get, well, let me pull this up. This is what I've done to the gun. I just went over it with washes of the transparent black, got it down into all the nooks and crannies, and did some aging and some damage on it. Yesterday you saw the decals, but today I started weathering over top of that, and I took all that clean white and just muddied it up, and let's see the label on the tank that screws into the bottom of the gun. But then I started playing with some of the Kelly greens of the hand. I don't want to end up putting coats upon coats upon coats of paint on this thing, and because this hand is already attached to the gun, it's unfortunately been getting more paint on it than the rest of the kit has so far. So I want to do my experimenting like on the other arm, and then once I get that color, carry it over to the gun hand so that it doesn't build up too many layers of paint on it. So let's pick up the gun with the most difficult part. Okay, the gun has a multitude of these little tanks, and they go back and up at a weird angle. And I took them all off when I was doing the repainting because they were just going to be in the way and I wasn't going to be able to paint around them. But they have to. Let me see if I can prop this gun up. It's going to be tough to prop up. Let me see. Hold on. Okay, the gun is propped up. And very crudely, these tanks... Oh, there it goes. Sorry. These tanks are going to have to be back and swept up and back at an angle. So I'm thinking the only way to get around that and to get them all lined up is to do the back two, which would be this one and that one, and then do the front two, that one, and then just lay a support between those so that I can line the rest of them up on this and make sure they're at the same angle. Hopefully this will make more sense as we get into it. Alright, I've just eyeballed in those 4 cans, and by looking down the sight I am getting somewhat of a parallel. I know they're way off because I'm not a machine, damn it, I'm a man, and I can't put them in with mechanical perfection. But what I can do now that I've got these 4 in is put a guide that I'm going to temporarily attach to those 4 so that the rest of them in between will at least share the same plane of slant. And there, now that I've got a temporary trough just with a couple strips of balsa that it can pop off easily enough when I'm done, but that will allow me to line up all of the canisters. Then all I have to worry about is the angle of them. I don't have to worry about the compound angle because one of the angles will be taken care of for me, and all I have to do is worry about making them all as roughly parallel as I can make them. Okay, I've got all the canisters laid out on the board, and I've glued them in place. I'm going to let them sit for a little bit, let the CA cure, and then I'll pop those off and we will clean them up and paint them. They still need to be that gunmetal color. But the weather has taken a turn for the positive outside. It was raining for the last couple of days, so it looks like it might be a good day to get some priming done on the Flying Saucer. So now that that's resting, I will go dig out the Flying Saucer and put together some major big construction pieces, and then take it outside and prime it. Okay, I am working on the Flying Saucer. I refuse to trying to keep pronounced Hanabu or Hanabu or just Flying Saucer is what I'm going to call it. And got some parts outside that I have primed and are drying in the noonday sun. And I am coming across, now I've not worked with a Squadron Models kit before, and my regular glues were not working very well on it. The Plastruct did not work very well. The 10X did not work very well. I'm hesitant about I tried using a little bit of CA. I don't want to put a model together with CA. If it's a resin kit, I'll put it together with CA, but I don't want to put a styrene kit together with CA. So, out to the hobby shop I go, and I'm going to try this Tamiya extra thin cement for the first time. I've heard things about it, but I'm going to give it a shot. I've never tried it on a kit before, so this is going to be the test case. Now, it seems to be doing its due. These three pieces are glued together. They set up pretty quickly, which is what I'm looking for, and so good on that. So these two pieces have the most illogical way of going together. They've got a couple of these little landing gear traps that you can kind of pull them together with, and there's one piece on the bottom, but there's I mean, it really wouldn't have hurt them to put some sort of keying in here, since this is a part that is all covered up. But this is basically flat seam against flat seam, and it ain't all that straight. So after some sanding to straighten it back out, I think I'm ready to glue it. What I might end up doing is, after I get it glued, I might reinforce it with some 5-minute epoxy on that joint. I'm just not wild about it. I think they could have done a better job with that. Okay, while I'm waiting for the glue to dry on the bottom of the Flying Saucer, I just painted in Christopher Johnson's pants and gave an inner coat to his jacket, and the bindings on his arms, the sleeves, I guess, remnants of sleeves. So having two kits to work on and bounce back and forth is helpful. But now this has had a chance to set up. Yes, that joint is ugly, but all of it will be covered by a piece at the bottom. But there's plenty of sanding and patching to do. Like I said, not a big fan of this big flat joint. I would almost rather they put this in 4 parts and key it together. But I'm not in charge. Alrighty, the reinforcements the guides are taken off, and the canisters are all in place, and they're mostly straight. I gotta be happy with that. Look down that view, they're pretty good. Tough to get that compound angle, both of them going both ways, but not so bad. Now they need to get painted with a coat of gunmetal. Let's do that now. Well, the gun is done. The gun is done. 2 things. I am certainly glad I took those canisters off to do the aging on the gun, because I never would have been able to get in and around those. And secondly, I'm glad I did age the gun, because I don't think I'd ever been able to put those canisters back on and keep the paint lines very clean and pristine. They just didn't want to go that way. So age is definitely an advantage in this case, as it is in most of life. But now that this is done, I'm going to let that gunmetal dry, and before I put maybe a dull coat over all of it and set it aside so that it does not get damaged while I am doing the rest of the wee creature. Well, good morning. It's Thursday. It is the gateway to the weekend, as they say, and I am working a bit on the Flying Saucer. Now, I'm happy to have found a glue that works on it, which is this Tamiya extra thin cement. First time I've used it. It has the it acts. I like it. It's fine. It acts like 10X does on regular plastic, and especially when you brush it into a joint that's already closed up. not maybe as quick as I would like it to be. It does take a little bit of setup time, but it's not as toxic as using a CA, which if you touch it wrong right away, it just locks into place, and you know, you end up gluing your fingers together. So I do like it better than the CA, but because of it, and because of the way this thing is designed, I've decided to go in on the back side and reinforce a lot of the joints with clear epoxy, which is just your basic 5-minute quick cure. What I like about epoxy, I like epoxies for different types of epoxies for different uses. There is the tube type epoxy, which is a putty that usually you find at the big box hardware stores, that you cut apart and knead it up like dough, and it's got a core that's one epoxy and a outer ring that's another, the other half of the epoxy, and you knead it up like a little putty dough. And you've seen me use that on the Falcon just most recently. I like that for building up solid areas, but it doesn't tool worth a darn, so you don't use that for anything that's got a nice finish to it. There is clear epoxy, which is probably the most obvious and easy to get, and it comes in 5-minute epoxy. It comes in 1-minute epoxies in the little squeeze tubes. I use that a lot if I want something to set up right away. If I've got a little bit more time to play with and I'm not in a rush, and it's not really I won't say a structural stress point, but it's not something that is hard to get to, I use a 5-minute epoxy. There's also a 20-minute epoxy. I can't imagine anyone ever using a 20-minute epoxy because I just don't have that kind of patience. But 5-minute epoxies, I like these types because they're pretty much 1-to-1, equal portions. You spread out a little dollop of it and then spread out, and then you mix them up and you throw it in place. But anything that has any elaborate mixing, like 16 parts of this to 23 parts of that, I have no interest in. I want a 1-to-1 mix, so that's good for that. There is also a JB Weld, which is a type of epoxy that is much like this. It's 1-to-1, but it has a let's see if I can find it. Do I have my tubes of it somewhere here? It's a black or a very dark gray material, and that is especially good, I find, for epoxies. Here it is. Let me dig it out. It looks like that's JB Weld. It's a 1-to-1 like this. You get 2 tubes of it like that. And what I like about it is it has a light blocking property, so it will also act as a light block. If you're trying to seal around a LED or something like that, you can use the JB Weld and it will seal it in. Thing about epoxies like this is that they're kind of self-leveling. They will, when they dry, they're liquid enough that they get a smooth coat on the top of them when they're done, which makes them different from like spot putty, because spot putty will dry with a rough texture and it won't necessarily find the lowest point, if you know what I mean. Liquid epoxies, you can pour it into a deeper crevice and it will seep in before it cures, and it will close up. It'll completely fill in an area where epoxy or Bondo putty kind of rests on the top of a surface, and that's fine if you want to if you're going to be sanding it, but epoxies don't sand very well. So this is not anything I would use on a surface that would show. It's all behind the scenes type of stuff. It's all structural background stuff. And anything you want that's going to show, you're going to want to use a Bondo putty on. So that's the short lesson on epoxies and Bondos. At some point in the future, I will do a thing on Epoxy Sculpt, which is a wonderful product. It does take a lot longer to set up, but you can tool it. By that I mean you can put a texture on the outside of it, you can sculpt it to an extent, and it's a lot more effective for finishes, for top coats, and for finish coats that you're going to paint. So let's get back into this flying saucer. Well, hello. It is Thursday afternoon, and got good news and bad news. The good news is I got the yard mowed, or most of it, today. The bad news is I found the hornet's nest, or sorry, a yellow jacket nest. So I did my best impression of Jesus Christ. First I implored my Father to damn them all to hell. And then I rolled a rock over their tomb, and if I'll go back in 3 days and see if there's anything left. But fun with nature. Always interactions with nature are always a wonderful thing. So back to the UFO, and the reason I am jumped onto this rather than onto Christopher Johnson is only because of the weather. I've been able to do some big scale priming of paint, which was something I couldn't do the last couple of days when it was raining. But it did give me a good excuse to pull out the old epoxies and do some epoxying and some sanding and some putty. So now that I've got this far ahead, I need to figure out what my lighting scheme is going to be on the inside, and what I'm going to do as far as any sort of customization, because I don't care for exactly how the interior on this is done. See, look at that, it's already falling apart. If you look, I'll show it here, so let's find it. It is right there. Look at that. It is, well, if you can see it, it's a detail meant to show a door, which is, you know, adorable, but there's no door on the outside to match up to it. I mean, I'll get these out of here. So why would you do that? Why would you put a door in there and then, you know, the interior wall is the exterior wall. There is no difference. So you would figure if they're going to go through the trouble of indicating a door on the inside, they should at least do one on the outside. So there's going to be a lot on this inner wall that I am going to customize. Now, the inside is basically covered up by the time you put the big gun on top of it, which does rotate and does look neat, and is meant to be taken off so that you can view the inside. Whoops, and there goes the guns. I gotta glue those puppies in, but that's the only way you're gonna see the inside. I mean, you can look in through the windows and see something, but this, much like a similar cabin in the C-57D, you can't see until you've taken the top off. So anything that I do, I cannot attach. I mean, the roof has to be removable. So I can't really put anything on the roof. Anything I put in is going to be along the walls. It's going to be the consoles. It's going to be the center column. I needn't have done that. I am right back. It was just a reach away. I've got this. I've had this for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. What it is a piece of lucite with bubbles trapped in it. And it's just a neat little thing that I've kept. A friend of mine who builds cabinets had this, didn't want it anymore, said I'll take it. So I'm going to cut a chunk of this, and I'm going to stick it down in here. And that's going to be my, that's going to be my engine. That's going to be my power tube. And I'm going to have some sort of lighting effect in here to really show off the bubbles. But it also means it has to stop at the point where this attaches to it. So I got to cut a chunk of it out. So that's going to be my central neat feature, and I'm going to have some blinking lights on that. But then I'm going to try to just light up the consoles and see what kind of fun I can have there. I think for today, the last thing I want to do is to get some primer on these turret guns and some of the smaller parts that I didn't get primed before. Good morning, it's Friday, and I've had a revelation. I woke up this morning with a fully formed idea in my head, which is, one more than I usually do, about this flying saucer. Something about doing it as a Nazi flying saucer just wasn't blowing smoke. I didn't care for it. I like being excited about building a model, and this is why I've never built actual, you know, Allied or World War I, World War II. I don't build real stuff. I have all kinds of envy for the people who can do it well. Namaste. Go do that. It's just not my bag of tea. Like I said, I like to see it when it's well done. It's not something that I want to spend a lot of time doing. So I got to find some way to twist and bend what would be a traditional build to my tastes. And even picking this UFO craft was left field enough. But I was trying to figure out what can I do to make this more interesting. So I thought of doing it as something from the movie Iron Sky. Now, Iron Sky is a pleasant little film, a satire, if you will, about a wildly incompetent and, let me see, what's the word I would use? Ill-prepared and incompetent and, frankly, bat guano crazy president of the United States who uses a moon landing to bolster her reputation, and then picks a fight with another equally crazy dictator to prop up the fact that her administration is failing. Now, when I originally saw that, that was fantasy. So I'll let you connect the dots as to whether or not that is relevant these days. But even then, I watched the movie again. The designs, while they are beautiful, they're boring as heck to look at as far as paint jobs. They're all blacks and very brutalist Art Deco. Actually, I think the term is a brutalist design movement for the Germans at that time. But even that, it was Nazis with swastikas, which really, outside of Indiana Jones, I don't really, want to have a lot of Nazi stuff in my house. So what can I do to make this more interesting? And I think I've come up with an idea or a twist or a bend on it that I can do. Unfortunately, it means stopping what I'm doing and taking a screeching left turn into how some of the parts are being prepared so that I can do this the way I want to do it, which means I also have to check my parts and lights and all that kind of stuff to see if I've got everything I need. If not, I might need to order some stuff and put this on hold while that stuff comes in. But I think I've come up with a way that's not only going to showcase these new paints that I've been falling in love with, which are these acrylic metal colors, but also gives it a bit of a twist and makes it something that I feel like I'm interested enough in doing, and that is to do this. And let me make a dramatic cut right here. Yes, I am going to make it a Hydra ship from the Marvel Universe, something that the Red Skull might have been working on before his untimely demise at the hands of Captain America. Early Red Skull, not or early Hydra, not 70s Hydra, or how it turned out into later movies. But this also keeps the World War II aesthetic, but it makes it fantastic enough that I can reconcile myself with spending time making it. So I'm going to plot this logo and use it on the outside of the ship instead of the traditional Nazi logos. Now what that's going to allow here is a completely wild fantasy-esque paint scheme that is not traditional, it's not what they used in Iron Sky, which was that brutal black and silver look with the white striping, and it's not going to be the traditional, the ones that come with the instructions, which is the camouflage look of a here. This is what comes with the instructions, and I never really understood why you would camouflage a UFO, because if you're going to make a UFO, you make a UFO with a cloaking device, and you don't need to camouflage it. So that's the camo look that I was not wild about. So not going to be doing that. Not going to be using the Nazi or the swastikas or the Iron Cross logos. So it's all going to be Hydra. Hail Hydra. And good old-fashioned black and white, you can hate 'em Hydra, and not the 70s espionage or even the what is in the latest episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the latest Marvel movies as Hydra. But good old-fashioned, you can hate them because it's Red Skull Nazis, Hydra. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a big old logo on the side. I'm going to try to do it in a way that is not very blatant, but showcasing these paints, the aluminums, the duraluminums, the buffed colors, and all that kind of stuff. So now that I found a good metallic acrylic color that I can use and like, I really want to go whole hog on that. And I'm also refiguring my lighting. I still want to put that tower in the center and light it up. I'm going to be doing lights on the consoles. I think I want to put light shining down from the wheel wells, and I want to light up, maybe not light up the guns themselves, but maybe this bulb in the center will be a light. So that's going to necessitate me going back and going through my LED inventory and see whether I've got everything I need to do that. This is my idea for the lights on the landing gear. It's just a simple cool white LED shoved down through there, but I think by the time you do the 4 of them and they are underneath the saucer, I think it's going to be nice and effective and not incredibly high-tech, but I think it's going to give a nice look like you would want to have if you were doing maintenance on the landing gear. You might like to have a work light under there. So I'll do that 3 more times, and we'll get to the wiring. Very well. There is one last bit of underlighting I want to do in this flying saucer, and that is to light up put some lights in the ceiling of the ramp well. Very similar to the ramp well in the Millennium Falcon. There's a little ramp that comes down out of there, and then it kind of goes up into nothing. Well, I want to cut that open. I want to cut this part of the ramp open, that back wall, and I want to carry it up into the cockpit. Now, the cockpit doesn't exactly line up with it feature-wise, so what I want to do is line this up in such a way that I can cut a hole there and create, scratch build a little well of a sort, and then on the inside I will cut a hole in the floor and have the top of that well, and I think what I'll do is put some sort of ladder in there, like the crew would have to come up. They'd have to come up this ramp into this doorway, and there'd be the base of a ladder there that would take them up to the flight deck. And since there's no room for, an elevator, and you can't, the floors don't line up exactly to where if you opened up the bottom, if you walked up the bottom of that ramp, it would take you to the flight deck. You have to go up a little bit. So I'm going to create a well in there, and that's going to give it some more interest, I think, when you pop the top off, and because this gun slides all around, but this will be lined up with that well and then go down and out the ramp. So what I want to do is do a little bit more cutting. Now, the first time I did this, I had everything lined up, and then when I put the cockpit in, or the cabin in, it was in the middle of a console, so that was no good. So I had to come up with the right orientation that would allow this to line up with the ramp hole. This is meant to go into the fit into the underside of the saucer precisely one way, and that is there. It has to line up that way, but once that's lined up, and let me do this with one hand here. See, this hole, this slot right there, is equal to that right there. And I suppose if I wanted to, I really could cut that out and slide it around any way I wanted to, but it looks like it's meant to. Here, let me put the camera down. Here is the cabin taped into the underside of the hull,
And you can see it's got that one key in it to keep it in the right position, which means that if this long console, which is the, one can presume to be the driver's console, is facing this way, then that makes this the front of the ship. And then it's got this kind of feature off to the side, which is kind of strange. You would figure that would be the front of the ship or the back of it, and it would be over there. But the way it's designed, that is the front of the ship. So I need to, and here are the, I need to line this up so that it fits on the hull in such a way that that drawn out hole is over top of that ramp. So it's going to fit like that. Sorry for the shaking. Okay, I've got everything taped together, and I am sufficiently satisfied that by cutting through all of that and the back of this piece, I can come to a floor, and cutting this piece out, I can come to a satisfactory conclusion on the making that tunnel. And then this piece, which will always and forever be removable, it has to be so you can see inside, I'm going to put a light between these cannons as well, so it's going to have to be completely self-contained with its own battery and switch, which is not tough to do. It's just going to need another circuit, but I think once it fits on something like that, we'll have an extra added feature in here. Now that and the tube which is in the other room, which will come up about here, will provide lights. There'll be lights in the consoles, and then there will be lights shining down from the landing gear, and one more or two more from that ramp. So it's going to be fairly well lit by the time it's all done. Okay, the holes have all been drilled through, cleaned out, and now I have to refine them. The first thing I need to do is to cover over this door detail on the inner wall. I'm going to make a floor perimeter detail and then perhaps a railing to go around that. And I also need to close up this side a little bit. I went a little bit X-Acto happy and made the hole too wide on this side. So close that back up, pop a ladder down there, and make up some hallway or some entryway walls so that when you look up the ramp, everything will line up. So, well, that's just lovely. That's the perimeter of the hole. I found the ladder that I wish to use. That's already the right scale. And I am going to now take a piece of flat stock and just cover over that door detail. And maybe make some little greebly to go on there instead. Okay, as you can tell, I have not done any more work on the Prawn because I got a itch under my skin about how to figure this thing out, and it took longer to do that. I was overcomplicating it as usual, when all I needed to do is put a simple barrier behind here, much actually like the scrim that's in the Flying Jupiter 2 kit. Just a scrim behind there, just a flat piece here, and then when I put this piece on, come on, try to do this with a, there you go. By the time I put this piece on, man, this all works so much easier in rehearsal. Okay, this piece is on so that when I look up underneath, I see that detail both ways. Now remember, there's going to be a gun sticking down out of that hole, so you're not going to be able to see that. So, but that gives you the indication. And then by the time I tuck the ladder down the hole, something like that, it's going to look exactly the way I need it to do. So let me get this piece glued in or painted first. I got to put a primer coat on it, and then glue it in place, and then I will be done working on the underside of this for the moment. Okay, this table is turning into a disaster area, and I'm getting ready to close this up for the week, but before I do, I want to point out two big old stupids. Big old stupids in the design of this kit. Now, I don't know whence this design came. It came from the fine people at Squadron Models. But there are two stupid things that I should point and laugh at. And you all should join in with the pointing and the laughing. These landing gear, they don't work. I mean, obviously they don't work. It's a model. But they don't fit because the door that they are required to go up into is narrower than the landing gear themselves. As an example, here is a landing gear in its place with the doors open. Okay, all of that. Now, if you were to close those doors and fit the landing gear over them like that, you would see that they are too wide. They would work with 2 tires in any of the 2 tires, but they will not work with 3 tires. They are entirely too wide. See what I did there? Stupid design. Wouldn't have killed them to make those doors just a little bit wider, or have them open up a little bit wider where the tire is. I've seen landing gear on actual kits where the door is the shape of the landing gear. Stupid mistake. Stupid mistake number 2 is this. This is the landing ramp. Landing ramp retracted. Okay, it works fine if you want to have the landing ramp extended. Good on you. But you cannot pull the landing gear up and close the door because the landing gear railings are taller than the well that they have provided for you. See, here's the landing gear pushed back up into place. There, landing gears, or the landing ramp is retracted. Now, try fitting this over top of it, and you see that it goes about like that, because I'll show it to you this way because it shows up a little bit better. This is the well for the landing ramp. Oh, come on. Like I said, this table is becoming a nightmare to work with. Okay, here is the landing ramp. And you can see it sticking up. But even with it up in the air a little bit, you'll notice that it knocks that top corner off. So what I'm going to need to do is alter this landing ramp so it looks like it might have fit at one point. There, I've just finished modifying the ramp. That wasn't so tough. They could have made it look like that from the start. But now it fits inside the ramp well, which now has 2 bright lights over top of it. But see, that wasn't so tough. Now it fits over top. And I can reassemble this for this evening to show you as much as we can, and I will show you where we left off on Christopher Johnson. Now, didn't get a lot done other than getting the clothing mast in this week. But things of a flying saucer nature took precedence, and I did get the gun done, which is the Gundam. This is not a Gundam. This is a done gun. But it's done and ready to go in hand, as the hand is there, when the rest of it gets finished. Okay, the patient is laying on the table. I can't tell you how many times I've rebuilt those antennae. Every time I breathe the wrong way, they break off. So got to be very, very careful about this. Try to do some cleanup around the head. It's just going to be very difficult to keep those guys from getting too damaged. So going to have to be a little bit more mindful of those guys. And here is where I'm going to leave the saucer for this evening. You think you can see I've got lights over top of the tunnel. The boarding ramp has been worked out, and I'm working on the interior, but I don't want to tear it apart again just to show you that. And I'm working on the lit landing gear as well. So progress is made on all fronts, but this is the ugly part. Okay, now I know it's time to shut down for the evening. Every time I bump something, I end up knocking one of those canisters off. So what this tells me is once this character is done, Christopher Johnson, I'm going to have to put him in his own little glass case away from everything so I don't even breathe on him wrong. Boy, this has been a tough week on this guy. Okay, I got to tell you, it's time to shut down for this week. It was going well, and then in the last couple of hours, oh, the swearing you would have heard if you'd have been here. I had to do some major damage control. Everything I touched was just falling apart in my hands. So that's a sure sign it's time to close it up for a week. Until next time, when we will continue on the now the Hydra Flying Saucer, or the Hydra Saucer, which I can still manage to pick up in one hand. The Flying Saucer, we'll work on this. We'll get back to Christopher Johnson, and next week is going to be a little bit of an iffy week because I've got family coming into town, staying at my sister's house, not mine, thankfully, because not that I don't love them dearly, but I'm not really set up to receive guests and have them stay for any length of time. So it's going to be an iffy catch-as-catch-can week. So until next time, when we throw some more effort at this mess, be good to each other, and we'll see you here next time.
Hail Hydra.
Hey!